Big 12 storylines. And this is presented by Baller Pickleball. Use our code 3TechPod for 10% off your order over there. Colorado 41, Texas Tech 27. Guys, we now live in a world where Colorado controls their destiny to get to the college football playoff. And honestly, good for them. They played good football. They were down 13-10 at the end of the first half, and then they came out and put just pedal to the metal and torch that Texas Tech secondary. We talked about the issues, the concerns that we had with the pass defense for the Red Raiders. They came in 133rd in the country. Yeah, Shedeur started to find some of those openings in the second half. It felt like they got their feet under them. The first quarter, they were rattled by that Red Raider crowd. They were loud. They were slinging the tortillas. Travis Hunter shoving them in his pants. It was just a really weird situation for Colorado, and they did not look locked in. The offensive line wasn't protecting Shedeur all that well. Second half, all of that started to shift. And shout out to the Colorado defensive line because they have quietly been really getting after opposing quarterbacks. They were averaging 4 sacks a game coming into this week, and they kept that rolling against the Red Raiders. They turned Baron Morton over a couple of different times. Guys, I mean, elephant in the room, we haven't talked about it because we're watching this unfold live. I have the Holy War on a second screen. BYU looks kind of stinky tonight. They're down, what is it, 21-10 at the half to Utah?
Yeah, that 2-minute drive attempt at the end of the first half was not pretty from the Cougars.
So right now, and we'll talk about the Colorado game in just a second, but right now we are about to maybe live in a world where Colorado sits in first place in the Big 12, depending on what happens, because Iowa State got shoved in a locker by Kansas. I know that was a 1-score game, but Iowa State looked terrible. I've got some thoughts on that in a minute. So I guess, Garrett, take it where you will. Talk about Colorado winning over Texas Tech. I thought Shedeur looked good. And give us kind of a State of the Union, maybe a halftime speech for your BYU Cougars.
Yeah, well, this is a real conflict of interest for me. I've been the Utah homer for years, standing up for BYU, this year. Really don't know what to say at this moment if you're a BYU fan, except for the fact that you're kind of just killing yourself right now. There's not a whole lot that Utah's done to really, I guess, go up over the top. They've had a couple touchdown drives. I got to give him some credit. Brandon Rose looking pretty good as the quarterback there, helping him get down the field. Hasn't been electric, but definitely doing what he needs to get Utah down the field. But, I mean, guys, BYU going for it on downs. Fourth down, they go for it. They don't convert. Turn the ball over. A couple plays later, Utah goes up, and now it's 21-10. All they got to do is punt, let their defense take care of business, and, you're feeling okay. BYU's got to come out and stop beating themselves in the second half if they want to keep their, hopes alive for the season. It's not like it's over, obviously. You'd still be in a position, I think, based on rest of the conference to win out, but you don't want to get rid of your margin for error. Obviously, rivalry game. Yeah, BYU is going to have to come out and look a lot better than they did in that first half. I do have trust that they will. They've had a couple of these situations before this year where they come out a little bit flat in that first half and then figure it out down the stretch. Thinking about the Oklahoma State game comes to mind, having to come back in that game. So definitely not over, but it'll be an exciting finish. Can't wait to probably break that one down in the midweek show as well. But it's going to be an exciting game to finish. And if you're not staying up to watch it, you're just wrong.
With the improvements that we've seen from Colorado's defense, Trey, it's really starting to lean towards Colorado not only being the favorite now in the Big 12 because of what they can do on offense and adding in a complete and lethal defense that can turn you over, but this is also starting to feel like a Big 12 team that you don't want to take your chances with in what would be the second round of the playoff, right? Because does anyone think the Big 12 is getting 2 teams in at this point? I certainly don't.
Not from what we see right now. No. Yeah. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think from a talent alone perspective, they're the team that probably scares an SEC or Big Ten average SEC Big Ten team the most in the second round. A lot has been made about wanting the 5 seed because you get to play the G5 representative in theory and then the worst Power 4 conference champion. might not want that smoke this year. You might have to deal with Ashton Genty and then Colorado, Shadir Sanders and Travis Hunter in your first 2 games. That might be a little more smoke than the average 5 seed wants. But yeah, I think of all the teams, if you're just asking me who I wouldn't want to play as an average Big Ten or SEC playoff team, Colorado's got to be towards the top of that list.
They're right there. I mean, they've certainly emerged. And again, the whole theme of this show has been, who do you trust? Who are contenders? Who are pretenders? Which teams are more complete than others? Because my goodness, if you have a flaw, it's being exposed this year. And we know that Colorado's flaws are in the trenches, right? They have not played well along the offensive line. They did not again today. But the defensive line has taken such immense leaps and bounds forward. The secondary's playing better. It feels like Shedeur and his magic is geared towards being able to survive the offensive line, right? Like he's able to extend and create and is willing to run. I think that's one thing that separates him from Cam Ward in my mind is Cam just kind of dances in the pocket. And we said from week 1 that his dancing would eventually cost him. And that is exactly what ended up, ending that game with the strip sack for Georgia Tech. I think Colorado might be putting all the pieces together to at least go claim the Big 12 championship. Now, my case for Boise getting that last bye in the first round was looking really good given these results until they only beat Nevada by 7 at home. I'm starting to think that dream might be dead. So for all intents and purposes, maybe we're looking at a 4th seed Colorado. But I guess turn your attention now to the Big 12 standings. Who gets to Arlington alongside Colorado? Let's say Colorado wins out, which I'll pull up their schedule. Their schedule is Utah, at Kansas, home against Oklahoma State. So 2 home games, 1 road game. Utah looks plucky tonight, but that's in a rivalry game where it's their Super Bowl. Potential letdown situation next week emotionally. Maybe at Kansas is the only game that you're kind of raising an eyebrow at, given what we just saw from the Jayhawks today.
Yeah, Kansas is playing a lot better. Iowa State that certainly doesn't seem like a team that wants to go to Arlington right now.
No.
Kansas State's creeping around. Kansas State lost to BYU before we knew what BYU was and lost in a monsoon to Houston. So creeping around at 2 losses, still a team that I think will have a lot to say about this race and they can knock Iowa State out of the way, and then they got to get a little bit more help to get back towards that tiebreaker scenario.
Yeah, Arlington is almost certainly BYU, Colorado at this point. Even if BYU loses tonight, they'll both be the 1-loss teams. And then it's Iowa State and Kansas State, both with 2 losses, kind of in that hunt. Arizona State, I guess, technically in that as well. But yeah, you look.
West Virginia has 2 losses.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I had to scroll to get to West Virginia. Sorry. So they also have 2 losses. You are correct, Trey. We'll give the Mountaineers their due. But yeah, I think BYU, even if they lose tonight, Kansas, Arizona State, Houston in the season doesn't necessarily scare me if you're a BYU Cougar fan. So I think you can almost all but lock that one in. And yeah, I think only one of those teams gets in the playoff.
Did you guys see the tweet from the Smoking Musket earlier today? And it was an upset, confused-looking Cincinnati fan. And the tweet was something like, when you run into the cosmic forces that don't allow Neil Brown to lose enough games to actually get fired. That was a very, very specific and yet true reference because, my goodness, West Virginia with a backup quarterback. I mean, it wasn't even Garrett Green today. They took an early lead, jumped way out to a lead, and then had to hang on. Cincinnati tried to come back in the end, but good for the Mountaineers. Good for the Neers finding something on the road. Maybe they just need to play all their games away from home in the Neil Brown era. I don't know.
That's what Neil Brown wants.
Evidently. I guess we do need to just mention what happened to Iowa State today. And that's, I said they got blown out by Kansas. The final score is 45-36. But if you watch that game, you know that the final score is in no way indicative of those final results. Kansas absolutely decimated the Clones early. They ran for 237 yards, which Trey, you mentioned. The path to victory for Kansas was through the ground, and Iowa State does not defend the run particularly well this year. Iowa State couldn't move the ball through the first really 2.5 quarters. They ran for just 78 yards. Now Rocco Beck throws for like 380. All of that really came late in this game as the Clones tried to charge back. But Kansas, good for them, man. They threw a punch early. Jalen Daniels was slinging the rock. I texted you guys they had a wide open strike to the end zone, I think, to go up 14-7 maybe. But Kansas looked locked in. Iowa State continues to find ways to underachieve and to disappoint their fan base. There was a Reddit thread that they hadn't had a 10-win season or any hope of a 10-win season, I guess, since the Ottoman Empire existed way back in World War I. So the Reddit thread was like, yeah, that's on me for assuming that we were going to put that streak to bed today against, a bad Kansas team. But I don't know what the answer is for Iowa State. It feels like it's like our golf game, right? Like you can't ever have the drive and the irons and the putting all going at once. Like something is switched off for the Clones.
I would start by trying to stop the run and maybe run the ball. I think that would be a good plan.
It's a bold strategy there, Cotton. Let's see how it pays off for him.
That typically leads to more winning, but I'm just a humble podcast host. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Losing your rushing margin 237-78, probably not the way to win a lot of football games.
Yeah. I like Matt Campbell, but boy, they've got to fix a lot of things. So the Big 12 is truly the conference of chaos. Again, if you're listening to this after the fact, we won't know the BYU final score, but Trey and Garrett will have all of that breakdown for you on our Tuesday Night Live show as the rankings come out. I am curious to see if BYU loses as well, what the new order looks like from the CFP committee. That's going to get a lot of reaction.
BYU is going to take a tumble if they lose.
Yeah, they're going to hate
BYU at 9. Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt about that.
Gracious, how about that?